Well, it's time to say hello to the anti-scam, anti-spam gang. We're going to have to come up with a real name for this, something a little catchy, something we'll all remember, something that'll get people to subscribe to this channel. That would be great. Speaking of great, I had a lot of thinking last night. Kind of waxing nostalgic, and I thought I'd take a little bit of a break from scamming and spamming to talk a little bit about the things I remember in my life. Originally, before I was going to do these videos, my intent for years had been to write a book. Well, that still hasn't happened. And I've embarked upon this journey, which I totally enjoy. And I hope that you guys out there enjoy it, because we're going to get better at a lot of things, and a lot of stuff about the spamming, scamming community. We're going to teach y'all a few little pearls of wisdom, how to deal with it. But as I sit around and think about what I'm going to write down for these videos, I've had a chance to stop and think about my life so far. I grew up in a small town near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, not too far from Hershey. Smelled that chocolate in the air, boy, that could make you sick on a windy day. And if you're downwind, you get a little tired of that chocolate smell. But I had a fairly normal childhood. Boy Scouts, going to church, working odd jobs on farms, baling hay and fixing the farm equipment. Even drove an Allis-Chalmers tractor with steel wheels that had plates on the wheels. And to put on the brakes, you let go of the steering wheel and you grab these two handles which stopped each wheel. Now there's a problem with that. The old farmer I worked for, when we parked it in the barn, he wanted me to pull it in. Well, if you didn't make damn sure it wasn't in gear when you crank started it, you can imagine what was going to happen to my little 130-pound body at the time. So, that was my first lesson in situational awareness and caution. Oh, I had a younger brother, and a couple of older half-brothers. When I got out of high school, I worked for a while as a draftman and for the city gas company. And then I joined the Marine Corps when I was 19. I turned 20 at boot camp in Parris Island. And after that, I attended infantry training. Every Marine is a basic infantryman, and they don't let you forget that. I then went to Jacksonville, Florida for what was called AEA school. That was a 6-month-long, all day long, highly intensive training on being an aircraft electrician. Now, I would have thought the electrician just changed light bulbs, but it got a lot deeper than that. It was a very rewarding experience, and later in life it proved to be very valuable for my future. So, after I left the electrician course, I got stationed in Beaufort, South Carolina, turned 21, and shortly thereafter I got a set of orders for Vietnam. When I got to Vietnam, I got put in a squadron that had just come off the aircraft carrier and went into what they originally called Base X. It was still under construction by the Seabees. It was a Marston metal runway. And we were in ancient UH-34s. The good thing was they had eyeballs painted on the front. As I'm flying into Quang Tri, where this was located, right near the DMZ, I said, "Ooh, this is where I want to be," because nose art on an aircraft is very important, very important. So that squadron was HMM 163, and 54, 55 years later, I still stay in touch with a lot of the guys, and every other year we have a mini squadron reunion. Now we're down to about 13 or 14 of us. There's 168 of us in Quang Tri. A lot of guys have died of cancer, Agent Orange related, and other reasons. But those of us that are still alive are very, very close, and we stay in touch on a regular basis. Calls at Christmas time, birthdays, all that stuff, which I'm grateful for that from 50 years ago, my combat buddies are still around, some of them, and we stay in touch. As an aircraft electrician, I had the opportunity to fly, voluntarily of course, as a machine gunner on the old UH-34. That was a very coveted position because you could earn your combat aircrew wings and an air medal or 50. It just depends. 25 missions, you get an air medal. So we spent 5 months there until they sent us down to Marble Mountain for the squadron to break up, sent the colors back to the States, and gave our aircraft to the Vietnamese. The Marines were starting to fly the CH-46 everywhere. I had no desire to have anything to do with them. We called them crowd killers. The aft pylons had a bad habit of falling off in the air. As a matter of fact, I saw one come off on the ground while they were tracking the blades. So a crowd killer was not for me. So I came back to the States and got put in a jet group. And I worked on some analog autopilots and low altitude bombing systems, stuff like that. And that was at Cherry Point, North Carolina. I had an opportunity then to go to AEB school, which was another 6 months, high intensity training. And this was essentially, this was equivalent to grad school. It was tremendously hard, lots of studying, and made it through that, and ended up with orders to Iwakuni, Japan. Now I got to Iwakuni. By that time I was a Staff Sergeant E6, and there were, and I had re-enlisted, and there were too many electricians, so they put me in precision measuring equipment, the test equipment shop, repairing test equipment and learning how to calibrate it, which is for an electronics person who was really into it, this was the place to be. So I did my year in Japan and came back to Beaufort, South Carolina, and checked in. Once again, they had plenty of electricians. So I asked the captain, I said, "Hey, look, I just got out of a test equipment shop. They had a sergeant running this one, so I was a staff sergeant. I said, how about giving me a shot at this?" He goes, "Sure, go ahead." And later on, a friend of mine that I was in Iwakuni with, a gunnery sergeant, he said, "Man, we got to get you studied up here, pass the entrance exam to go to Lowry Air Force Base, and go to PMEL school, which is the real test equipment precision measuring." for time-based and advanced microwave. Hell, I hadn't even been to basic microwave. And Frank taught me all that with a slide rule, of course. You know, spending your weekend doing 26 simultaneous linear equations, and each one depended on the other to get the right answer, was really a good way of having fun. So, went to Beaufort, spent 4 years there, and got orders to Okinawa. Now, we called Okinawa the Rock. But I was going to be back in helicopters again, so it was a real toss-up. I had just had a job interview with Philips Medical Systems, and in between I'd taken some nighttime college courses and stuff, and really rolling along in my electronics education. Well, they offered me a job as a trainee or field service engineer. That was in November, and I wasn't getting out till May. Now, I had a contract and everything. So I knew I had a job. I knew I didn't want to go to the Rock. Well, I was about 3 weeks away from getting out. And here my name shows up in the Navy Times. I had been selected for Gunnery Sergeant E7. Now everybody knows gunnies run the Marine Corps. And damned if I didn't have orders to Okinawa if I took that promotion, because I would have to stay 2 more years. I also had a job that would have me working in hospitals which were full of nurses. Well, we didn't have many females in the hangar and in the headquarters and maintenance squadron in those days. So took me about 30 seconds. I decided to go ahead and get out and not get promoted. And I think back on those days, who knows what would have happened. I would have certainly been in some dicey situations. Operation Eagle Claw, where they went out in the desert in Iran. A couple of friends of mine were on that mission. And that would not have been for me. I had already done my machine gun time and sweating through my patent leather flight boots, and I don't want to do it anymore. Well, I got out, went to work for Philips Medical Systems as a trainee. Within a year's time, I became a sales engineer and had my own territory up around Durham, North Carolina. I had Duke University of North Carolina as some of my customers, in Wake Forest. I met my wife-to-be at Duke University, which was a lucky thing. But she's still here and she's taking care of me. It's been 46 years later. So, after a while, I got to know the chairman of the department real well, and a lot of the doctors. I spent a lot of time working very hard there, and sold on October 13th, Friday the 13th, 1978, I sold them $2.1 million worth of x-ray equipment. And later on, the chairman of the x-ray department, Dr. Putman, hired me to be in charge of all the x-ray equipment at Duke University. And that was in the clinics, and it was everywhere. And then I got the opportunity to work with the guy was chief of radiation physics, and he became my mentor in physics, Dr. Fergus O'Fallon. He was an Irishman and quite an individual. It's one of the high points of my life. After they had run, universities, they run on grants, and my grant money had run out for the job they had put me in radiology. So I left Duke and got a job with Toshiba Medical Systems working on CT scanners. Now, that was an interesting job. And then later I left Toshiba and went back to Philips working on CT scanners. Well, here comes an offer for employment as a national service person on the flying squad from Philips headquarters to leave the Charlotte office and get promoted up there. Well, my boss came to me and he says, I've never ever had this happen to one of my employees. I said, what's that? He said, get offered a job at headquarters. He said, but I've got a surprise for you. I was planning on making you the district service manager. You know, so I turned down the headquarters job and became the district service manager for North and South Carolina. Later on, I got promoted to the district service manager, and then when they reconstructed, the regional operations manager in Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi. So Philips was a real good experience. We had management come in from GE, and that totally changed the culture. So I wasn't very happy with that, and I had a lot of CT scanner experience by then. And there was a company in Nashville, and that's where I was at the time, and the name was Remedpar. It stood for Reliable Medical Parts. And GE had pulled some kind of move to lower their taxes, and they were supposed to have junked a bunch of excess scanner parts and equipment. Well, they didn't. They sold it to a bunch of guys in Tennessee, and one of them had been a trucker. He rounded up a bunch of trucks and hauled all this stuff down from Milwaukee to Tennessee and put it in a 75,000 square foot warehouse. I went to work for them as their chief operating officer, and we had a really good time, and I got to the point where I'd gotten a big sailboat and I wanted to get the heck off of a lake. I had a 39-foot Beneteau. So I had a client in Tampa, GE Walker Incorporated, and he needed a sales manager. I said, yeah, I'll take it. When I got there, he gave me the service manager on top of it with a $2,000 increase. Well, the other guy was making $75. I think he saved some money there. I worked for GE Walker for exactly 1 year. And many people I know told me that the president of that company was the closest thing they'd ever had to an alien encounter. And I have to agree. So I formed my own company, started flying here, there, and yonder, ended up doing a lot of work in Latin America over the next 15 years, learned Spanish fluently, ended up with an office in Guatemala City and an office in La Ceiba, Honduras. Oh, my partners in Honduras bought me out with my own money, and my partner, who was a German guy, got killed in a car wreck in Guatemala. Well, I came back up and started operating out of the Tampa, Sarasota area for a few years, and finally decided, well, I'm 72 years old, it's time to retire. So I did. I'm 76 now, and you see what I'm doing. I'm staying busy. I like to play with microwave stuff still. I build little microwave antennas and test equipment to calibrate them with, and I use this stuff in the racing quads where you have onboard video and you wear goggles. So my retirement's Been fun. It's been technical. I enjoy a technical challenge. Throughout the years in the CT scanners, I had learned how to do things in Unix and all sort of machine code at Toshiba. A lot of that stuff operated on machine code, and I still keep my hand in it, doing stuff with Arduino microcontrollers, and now a little bit of Linux. So I guess that's why the kids in elementary school used to call me, "Hey, Mr. Science," and kissing the teacher's butt. But, I wasn't. I was enjoying everything about science that I possibly could. And it's still that way. I have never, to this day, learned the true science of dealing with women, but I have stayed married for 44 years. So with that, I'll leave you with a good old Marine Corps Semper Fi, and I'll see you on the next video.